Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcast. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Wednesday. So this is The YouTube show is going to be a little bit differently today. I'm playing some audio from an interview I did, so that's going to be in the actual podcast. So we're going to just really have the first segment of today's show here on YouTube. So it's going to be a shorter video, but one about why I think most people are kind of approaching the Pelicans offseason from a point of where they need to add players, CJ McCollum, Buddy Hield as an example, guys like that. Why are they looking to get these vets and try and win now? Isn't that what they did with Anthony Davis? Isn't that what they did wrong around Anthony Davis? And I'll tell you why those two scenarios really aren't the same. But before we get to that and just do the first segment of the podcast, which will be longer if you want to go listen to it wherever you get your podcast, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Download the app and find one of our Locked On rooms. They have them all of the time on there just to chat all things NBA. Spotify Green Room, changing the way we talk sports. So this is a little bit different because the Pelicans are approaching a very pivotal offseason, I think, in the franchise's history, trying to build around Zion Williamson. And while the Pelicans have been here before, year 2, year 3 of Anthony Davis, and really tried to kind of accelerate around him, trading away first-round pick after first-round pick, right, to build around Anthony Davis and get that young vet model that Dell Demps really liked around him, it kind of blew up in their face when they didn't really have flexibility or, very many assets to trade in the future. And eventually he got tired and he wanted out. So why are a lot of people, myself, others in the media, trying to put a winner around Zion in year 3? It does seem like on the surface, it's repeating some of the same mistakes, but I don't think it really is. And that's what I kind of want to get into in this segment. So there's more of an emphasis to win now because we're already hearing rumblings of Zion Williamson being upset. We didn't hear that with Anthony Davis until he was on his second contract, till he signed that extension and Alvin Gentry was his head coach. You're already hearing it at the end of year 2 around Zion Williamson. Normally you think you get these rookies that you draft for 6, 7 years, maybe 8, just kind of depends on how the contracts shake out. But in reality, they start the timelines earlier, I think, for these guys wanting out and trying to force their way out. And Zion's an even more special case because of how good he is, because of how hyped he is. And if you've been a long-time listener, you've heard me be worried about this. There is a world where he takes a qualifying offer instead of going into restricted free agency and taking a longer-term deal from the Pelicans or with another team that the Pelicans then match. There is a world where after his 4th year in the league, he plays on a 1-year qualifying offer on his 5th year and then is an unrestricted free agent after that. That's going to be here sooner than you know it. And then say he does sign an extension, though you don't get those guys for that whole time of that contract. Say he signs a 4-year deal. You get the 4th year being of that a player option, right? So you've got team control of him for 3 years. You've got to trade him at the end of that 2nd year, basically, to try and get any value for him when everyone knows that he's going to opt out. It was the same for Anthony Davis, right? They traded him with a year left on that deal because they wanted to get something in return rather than let him walk away for nothing. So it's like life comes at you fast. These contracts, while it might seem 4 years, it's really 2 years where you don't need to worry. And that's why I think you're seeing the Pelicans look to try and get into the playoffs a little bit sooner. Make him happy, keep Zion Williamson here as long as possible. They kind of did that, though, with Anthony Davis and still backfired. The thing is, though, the Pelicans have a war chest of assets, and that is not what they had in the Anthony Davis era at any point. They had to be very careful with the moves they make because if you say traded for Omer Asik and used a first-round pick for that, you couldn't then use another first-round pick to try and offload his contract if it didn't work out. You needed that for something else. So those moves you really needed to nail because you couldn't get out from under that. It's a little bit different from the Pelicans right now with all of those Lakers picks, with all of the Bucks picks, potential pick swaps in there too if you need those, if those do play. You can use a first-round pick to move on from Steven Adams, to move on from Eric Bledsoe. You can trade for a guy like CJ McCollum, a Buddy Hield, who, if you're going to listen to the podcast, and you should, on the actual podcast format, hopefully you're listening to that right now, that's a pick that you can use to bring in a guy like that for shooters, because that's the trade I made in our ultimate mock draft. So when you listen, or when you look at the situations, they can do this and they can still have assets left over, whereas the Pelicans before didn't have that. And look, appealing Zion Williamson is a really important thing. And we've heard some of the rumblings of him being unhappy. And I can tell you from talking to people close to him that that's somewhat there. He's not asking out yet. He doesn't necessarily want out yet. And he's not necessarily deciding right now if he's going to take a qualifying offer or not. But that's something that's on his mind. I guarantee you. And something that the Pelicans are keenly aware of and a little bit worried about. This fan base wants to win. He wants to win. Brandon Ingram wants to win. All of these guys want to win. And it's not like they have so many picks, so many assets that they can use. You may as well use some of them. You don't want to let these things eventually evaporate or turn into bad players. You want to use these and cash them in. You don't need to go all in this offseason. I don't really see a move where they go all in this offseason, but you can use some of these pieces now to bring in other players that can help you win. Maybe it's Kyle Lowry, like we talked about yesterday. Maybe it's Buddy Hield, CJ McCollum. I can list some other names out there too, but I think that's why you see a lot of people saying they should do this. It's time to win with this team. Whether it fits the normal timeline or not, this timeline is accelerated and not artificially accelerated like what Dell Demps tried to do, thinking that the team was ready to win around Anthony Davis sooner than what they wanted to do. Didn't kind of get guys on quite the right thing, ended up making the wrong moves, so the idea was there, and then ran out of picks and assets and was kind of stuck. There were only so many ways he could upgrade the roster and couldn't really do it in a significant way. Look at the Portland Trailblazers right now around Damian Lillard. They're kind of in that vein. They've done it. They've spun the wheels. Now they're out and they can't really do anything else. And now he wants out because they're kind of at the end of the line, the end of the rope, and they're holding on for dear life. And I think that's what separates the Pelicans currently from the Pelicans of the past, and why they are looking to try and win now. It's a similar model to what Dell Demps was doing, except you have the other assets where if you make a bad move, you can use some of those to try and get off of it. And you have a guy that's impacting winning sooner than Anthony Davis did. And that's the underrated part of this. You have Brandon Ingram there. You didn't have a second number like that around Anthony Davis till you got Drew Holiday, but he wasn't even at that level necessarily in terms of a score and a guy ready to win. AD in his third year wasn't as good offensively as Zion Williamson is right now, and completely bending defenses like Zion does, and is entirely the focal point of the team. All of these guys, it's better than it was around Anthony Davis right now, and I think that's why they want to try and win, and that's why these players want to try and win. And I think that's why you're seeing names like Kyle Lowry come up. And so if you've thought before, don't do this, you're repeating the same mistakes. Yeah, you might mortgage the future to a certain degree, but there's no future if Zion isn't there. And that's some of the things that I think about when it comes to what the Pelicans are looking at this offseason. So if you've been watching on YouTube, thank you all for watching. Like I said, quick video today. We'll be back with the usual podcast tomorrow, but go listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. If you want to hear more about the trade with Buddy Hield coming to New Orleans along with the 9th pick and then the 10th pick and Eric Bledsoe being shipped out to the Sacramento Kings, I speak with Matt George, host of Logs on why we did this trade. It's going to be pretty insightful. I think these are very realistic moves that both teams might do. So give it a listen if you haven't already. So thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with you all tomorrow.